The biggest reason we're looking at rejuvenation, we're looking at legumes, is we need more production per acre. You don't improve soil, you don't improve profit unless you've got production. You don't cut down on winter feeding days unless you've got more forages to graze. Is it more acres or is it growing more per acre? And that's one of the strengths Union Forage has with so many of their reps all using controlled grazing. And this is an area Graham really develops well.
It makes a hell of a difference. The weeds start getting invasive, more weed control you need. The grasses don't grow as strong. In a drier conditions, they're less likely to rebound that year after one particular grazing. But if you look on the other side of the fence, you know, we can use rotational grazing and rotate cattle through and get multiple grazings in a good time and a bad time. But even in a good time and a bad time, we can pick one cell out of the whole system and let it rest that whole year. And don't graze it till the fall or the first paddock the following spring. But what it's doing, it's letting the seeds set on our legumes and our grasses. They drop on the ground, or the cattle will reap those up and eat them, and then they'll distribute them out through manure all over the paddock. And I've got paddocks that have never had a seed drill in them, particularly my swath grazing, where I'm finding sandfoin and size of milk veg turning up. And that's because the cattle have come off legume pastures and gone to winter swath grazing, and they might have had some seeds left in their rumen. And a simple fence like this is a hot wire, cold wire, hot wire as a perimeter fence is cheap. It's about 1/3 of the cost of a conventional 4 barbed wire fence, and it's just as effective, even more effective, I think. And it's soft enough here that the deer or the elk can push through and not have to get tangled up in there. And that's something with electric fencing. It doesn't have to be singing tight. You keep it loose like this, and so anything that hits it, could be a wild cow, they're not going to tear the whole fence out. They'll trip over and go off. You can then, from these fences on your perimeter, then you can have single wires going everywhere else. Okay, so you can cut this quarter section up into more cells with just a single high tensile wire. Make sure your ground rods are back at your energizer. You've got multiple ground rods. It doesn't matter if you've got a Gallagher or a True Test energizer. Don't go and buy a cheap one. You go and put the money into a fence like this, and then you go and buy a cheap $200 energizer. It's going to let you down every time, and you're going to be regretting it. So it doesn't matter if it's the 2 top brands. Consider both of them as part of your fence assembly. So you're going to look at anywhere between $900 and $1,500 for a good size energizer. It depends how big your operation is, but don't cheap out on the energizer. If you want to cheap out somewhere, cheap out on a fence line, you know, something like this. You might just use 2 wires instead of 3 on a perimeter, but don't cheap out on the energizer. So yeah, that's kind of rounding off on the perennial talk right now, but as you can see what Grant's talked about, you can do it really cost effectively. If you were starting from scratch on a cultivated land or something like this, a Roundup sod that was seeded with perennial grasses and legumes, you'd be looking anywhere, if you're putting legumes in only, for about $38 an acre with sandfoin vetch alfalfa. But if you were looking for more grass species and you're starting from scratch again, you're going to look at about anywhere between $65 and $70 an acre. So pretty substantial investment. So you should look at doing it right in the first place, and do your homework. Talk to guys at Union Forage or wherever, preferably Union Forage, and we can help you out and get started.